Right, here we have my alarm clock. And last week I said this was a physical computing device, which means it has some kind of an input, a processor that processes the information from the input, and an output. We have 4 buttons here on the left, 4 buttons here on the right, 7 buttons up top. Those are all input components, but there's also a thermometer embedded within it. So we have different inputs. There's a processor within this, and then outputs we have LEDs. Right now it's not plugged in, so we don't see it. We have LEDs. We have speakers on the side here. And today we're gonna open it up and hopefully find the processor. We have 2 screws by each of my thumbs here. And that's the only thing I can see that'll allow us to start taking this apart. So I'm gonna take those out and see what we find. All right, with those screws out, that's all I can see that's holding this together right now. And after fiddling with it a little bit, you have to push kind of in on this side here, which allows it to come apart there. And so here is the inside of my alarm clock. On the back side of this, we have the LEDs. We've got the speaker here on the left and power coming from our power cord. But I believe this is the processor here. But any button we hit will send some kind of a signal that then will come in through to the processor. The computer will then make sense of it, or the processor will make sense of that and then send the information where it needs to go. I can identify 6 screws maybe that are holding this to the front of the alarm clock. Let's see if I got all the screws. Boom. Ooh. All right, this is pretty cool. So we have our various buttons here, and these from the outside, they have this presentable case on it, which makes it look like a button we're familiar with, but this is all the button is. It's just a little push button. So if you push that, that would send a signal to the processor. It would make sense of what that button is. All right, this is pretty interesting. Here, if you look at one of these buttons here, on the back side, it has 4 prongs that come up. Each of these prongs comes up and it's soldered to this circuit board. 2 of the prongs are on a path, and it looks like the lead goes up to the right here. The other 2 are on a different path and they go elsewhere. But this information it comes to this processor here. So the processor has information coming in, and we see it looks like around the right side here and across the top and a little bit on the left side, that is information coming into the processor. Some of that might be going out as well. But then all of these down here, these leads here are going out to the LED board. The speaker, that's getting information from this line here. And if we were to follow where that is coming from, we would be able to trace it back to the processor somehow. But there are a lot of other components I'm not familiar with on this circuit board. It's just really interesting to see how this is all connected and take a look at some of these components. All right, I'm curious what this looks like if we take the LED front off of it. So I'm gonna see if I can do that. This is where it stops for me. On the back side here, the pins that come up from the LED board up through the circuit board, each of these are soldered onto the circuit board. So I'd have to undo all of those solders if I were to pull this off completely. So we can see here, each of these pins is connected to this processor. You can see the path it takes. This processor makes sense of information from the inputs, and it's sending information to these outputs so that it can turn on the appropriate lights on the front of the LED board. Now the task of putting it all back together and hoping it works right. All right, well, I got it all put back together. I plugged it in and everything seems to work just fine. The speaker was working, the LED screen was working. So I call that a success. Dug into it, saw some neat things, and was able to put it back together, and it still works. All right, victory.